Welcome everyone to the Congressional briefing on the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 study here in the nation's capital in the actual Capitol building. My name is Ozlu Tunceli, and I am the Chief Counsel of Government and Public Affairs at Americans for the Arts, as well as the Executive Director of the Americans for the Arts Action Fund. I want to thank our hosts today, the Senate Cultural Caucus co-chairs, Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island and Senator Susan Collins of Maine, as well as the Congressional Arts Caucus Chair, Representative Shelley Pingree of Maine, and Congressional STEAM Caucus Chair, Representative Suzanne Bonamici of Oregon. I'd also like to thank all of you here in attendance, both congressional offices and our 14 arts leaders from across the state who have flown in today to Washington, D.C. and are here among the 373 study regions of the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 study to share highlights and results and their experience with their members of Congress for their state delegation. Also participating today are our Facebook Live and Instagram Live viewers, and welcome to all of you today as well. Today, we will also have a special treat, an opportunity to hear from our artists in residence, Carrie Tillis, who hails from Nashville, Tennessee, who has been working on a project for the Americans for the Arts Action Fund on a great way to showcase advocacy through the visual arts. And it will depict visual stories of how and why the arts matter in every state in this country. And she has already completed 6 states, and she'll be presenting 2 more states today with original artwork that will be presented by the arts advocates from Maine and from Rhode Island, along with Carrie, to their senators at today's briefing. So we really look forward to that and showcasing it to our viewers today. So let's now begin with the program. I'd like to invite our first speaker, Nolen Bivens, who is not only the president and CEO of Americans for the Arts, and also the organization that produced this phenomenal economic and social impact study of the nonprofit arts and culture industry. He is also a decorated and retired general of the United States Army, and I'm very proud to introduce you, Nolen, to the stage.
Thank you so very much, Nina. I appreciate that very kind words. My mom is the only one that really enjoys those nowadays. Some of my siblings don't. But first of all, just again, welcome to everyone here today. Thank you so very much. Like Nina, I'd like to also thank all of our hosts that's providing the opportunity for us to do this. Welcome to our congressional briefing on the national release of our Arts and Economic Prosperity Study 6 for nonprofit arts and culture sector. Thank you again for joining us. As Nina said, I'm Nolen Bivens. I'm the president and CEO of Americans for the Arts, and we are a national service organization that advocates for arts and for the opportunity for everyone to experience the arts for a lifetime, said very simply. When advocating for the arts, I very often take the opportunity to champion the great work of you, many of you, the local arts agencies, the advocates out in the field, but also today for those congressional members that also join us in moving many of the policies and ideas that we have bringing forward. You also are part of championing that work that we do. So thank you so very much. You know, the arts inspires us. They beautify our cities and our towns, and they build more greater connectivity within our communities. I have found that elected businesses and community leaders also want to hear, but in reality they really need to hear the great economic benefits of the arts within their particular areas as well. The arts are a robust industry. They support jobs, they generate government revenue, and they create authentic experiences that attract visitors and tourists to many of the areas of our representatives and our regions that we live in. And if you ask us why are we doing a prosperity study at this particular point in time, well, the need could not have been more important and more definitely at this particular point in time. I can't believe I'm saying this, but in this post-pandemic period, we know serious challenges still await the arts and the arts and cultural sector. Audiences are still slow to come back and sit shoulder to shoulder. Programs and labor costs are up while our contributed and our earned revenue is down. and in many instances, the billions of dollars from the pandemic dollars we received, while I greatly appreciate all the support of everyone, those dollars are now diminishing as well. And we're also recognizing that we're exhausting many of those funds, and organizations now have to replace them. State arts agencies, for many of which you represent here, good news, your budgets are, I think, coming back, but they're still challenged as well. But the most harmful fact is that our jobs in this industry have been the hardest hit. There was a study by Johns Hopkins University in 2021 that stated that the percentage of job losses in the nonprofit government organization sector was nearly 5 times that in other, just in general, nonprofit sectors. We've heard the many stories of how the economic challenges threatens and either live performing audiences, organizations are battling those challenges at this time. They very well could be, however, the canary in the minefield for a lot of things that may be yet to come. So we cannot let up in our advocacy. This is why it's crucial for us to tell our stories about the impact of the arts within our communities. The arts should be thought of as a national asset, is one of my favorite expressions, supported and cultivated by everyone within the country. The release of our Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 study, the largest of its kind, provides strong case-making evidence and the tools, by the way, we need to generate more private and public policies at the national, state, and local levels. The key, though, is for us now to use the data in this way. In 2022, the private sector is giving to the arts, culture, and humanities by individuals, foundations, and corporations increased by 2.9%. That's up by $24.67 billion. This is a new high watermark for total giving to the arts. The story for 2022, however, is high inflation as well. So when you make the adjustments, this 2.9% increase in giving to the arts represents a decrease actually of 4.7% when adjusted for that inflation. However, private contributions to all charities decreased for the first time in a decade, now sitting at about $499 billion. And that's down by 3.4%. Individual giving dropped by 6.4%. And this is noteworthy because of the individuals represent 60% of all the giving that we find into this particular sector. Giving by corporations, however, was up by 3.4%. And foundations maintain an upward trajectory of about 2.57. So you see a lot of mixes, up and downs, and in balance. This is a time for us really to continue our advocacy. And that's why I think this moment in time is so important for us. But let's remember, while this study actually talks about the economic benefits and prosperity of the arts and the contribution there, it also for the first time demonstrates, and you'll hear about this morning, the arts impact socially, culturally, and from an educational perspective. And we think that is foundational for this study at this point in time. I want to thank the 373 local arts organizations, state research partners that joined us in this study. Groundbreaking as it is, it truly is an investment at this particular point in time to make the powerful research that we do known throughout the country and the benefit to the arts. I also want to thank our very influential national partners that range from individuals like the local elected leaders, the state, federal, and business leaders, and also our creative associations that have partnered with us in this. And finally, as Nina did, I specifically want to thank Senator Reed for hosting this event, Senators Reed and Collins for their leadership as co-chairs of the Senate Cultural Caucus. Both senators have been champions for the National Endowment for the Arts funding, and now know the importance of investing in this particular area of the arts. I also want to thank Representative Dingell for her strong support of the creative economy. Her commitment to small arts businesses through her bill, CREATE Act, many of you know about, is an important step in supporting the economic impact of the arts that we're here to talk about today. Again, in closing, we all believe in the power of the arts, and I thank each and every one of you for being here with us today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Nolen. Our next speaker is Lynne McCormack. She is the Executive Director of the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, and she has had many experiences with multiple economic impact studies. I'd like to have her share a little bit about that, and then introduce her great senator, Senator Reed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinah. Thank you, Nolen. Thank you, Randy, for all your incredible work on this study. My name's Lynne McCormack. I'm the director of the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts. Just for the past year, prior to my arrival at the state, I was the director of the Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism in the city of Providence. And I cannot take credit for being part of this study. They did all the work. They continue to do the work. So I want to thank my great friend Joe Wilson Jr. and his amazing team for doing this economic impact study in Providence. But I'm here to talk about the impact of the study on the city and the ability to move things. I think it was probably 20 years ago, we did the first study when I was director. And as a result of that study, to be able to show the numbers and the economic impact of arts and culture on our city's economy and on our state's economy, because many of you know Rhode Island is a city-state, it really was able to move the needle in terms of our relationship with elected officials, from the mayor down to the city council. It was very enlightening to the city council to see the economic impact. As a matter of fact, I think at one point they asked me to do the study. And in the process of being able to really put numbers to this, it increased our ability to have conversations, and also leverage other funds. And so over the last 20 years in Providence, there's been an incredible leverage of other funds towards arts and culture besides the arts money. So the community development block grants have been leveraged towards arts and culture. Senator Rhode has actually led the charge on some EPA brownfields money going to cultural development in the city. And so this study is really important. It's incredibly important to us as arts administrators, but also to really value and show the impact. So in the 18 square miles of Providence, which is not a very big place, there's a $207.5 million impact on art because of the arts and culture nonprofit sector, and it supports 2,774 jobs, and that's in a city of about 180,000 people. So it's a significant factor. In Rhode Island, the arts are 3.2% of the GDP and supports over 16,000 jobs. So it's a big important thing for us in Rhode Island. It's been my incredible pleasure, though, to have this leader, Senator Jack Reed, in our midst in Rhode Island. I know he feels a lot of responsibility towards Senator Pell's legacy in the NEA, and that is one of the reasons that he does this work. However, he is a stalwart champion for all of us, not just in Rhode Island, but nationally. Because of his work, the National Endowment for the Arts is at an all-time high, with a $207 million appropriation for FY24. So I want to thank Senator Reed for that incredible work. His work on education appropriations has consistently led to yearly increases in that budget. It was my pleasure this summer to spend time with Senator Reed and Chair Jackson from the NEA, touring around Rhode Island, showing Chair Jackson the wonderful things that happen. And in that tour, Senator Reed's staff really wanted to focus on how the arts serve our community. And so we looked at community development, we looked at projects where we've been working with arts and health. We had a wonderful event in the morning that really centered culture bearers. So we are trying so hard in Rhode Island with Senator Reed's leadership to really integrate art strategies into all these different things. And I know that he understands what that means from a social cohesion standpoint, from an economic impact standpoint, and from a health and wellness standpoint, and particularly in the space of serving veterans and military. So before we bring you up, Senator Reed, we're going to have Carrie come up. We have a wonderful poster to share with you that Nina spoke about. So come on up, Senator Reed, please. And Carrie's going to talk a little bit about the poster.
Hi, how are you? So good to meet you. Yes, the artwork, I'm sorry.
It's original artwork.
It's original artwork.
Good morning. I am so, in the words of Minnie Pearl, since I am coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee, I am just so proud to be here. You know, when you are faced with a blank canvas, it's a bit daunting. But Rhode Island gave me a lot of inspiration, and it started on a really interesting deep dive. Started with 400 miles or so of coastline, clams and costume jewelry, and then also harbor seals. it's funny when you start to do a deep dive and history and geography start informing a picture. And before I knew it, my imagination took hold, and I had an interesting little picture of Harbor Seals playing jazz instruments on a vaudeville stage. and I said, yeah, go with it, because all of a sudden, that fun little image actually said a whole lot. The Stadium Theater was the backdrop. It was a vaudeville theater that had been revitalized. It shows revitalization in a community that leads to performance venues and education venues for youth and children, programs that will encourage arts and healthy growth in our youth. The music, we know the power of song and social movements in the jazz and the folk festivals in your state. It was a wonderful start to the center of a painting, and as I kept researching, then all of a sudden I started to look towards other massive movements where your state actually leads the charge. In arts and health alone, the Department of Health, the State Council on the Arts, and the School of Design, which is one of the best in the country, have come together to show how arts and health do overlap and should overlap. Artistry is used in healing environments and patient care and community well-being and mental health, and I was able to weave paint tubes coming out of EKGs like medicine and EKG lines looking like the music staff coming out of the saxophone horn. There's so many creative ways to overlap images and the amazing things that are going on in your state. I found out about a place called Flying Shuttle Studio. It's a small studio that gives space for disabled artists a chance to not be limited by their disabilities. They get to weave and come together as artists and be a part of the community and be supported. And even free art installations like water fire sculpture, which also launched into artist residence, where professional development for artists under 30 can have support and education outside the traditional school experiences and continue to launch their careers. And I could go on and on and on. And one canvas is not enough room for all the good things that are going on in Rhode Island. But I have been inspired, and I certainly hope that in my little way, you can look at this painting, if you have this on your wall, and be reminded of all the good things that are coming from the artists in your state. And art is like this art and health, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's healing. We must have it. And thank you for all the good work that you're doing, and I'm glad to contribute. Thank you so much. Woo!
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. I want to thank Lynne not only for their very, very kind introduction, but for her extraordinary leadership in Rhode Island. And also, I would like to acknowledge my friend, my desperado comrade, Susan Collins. When they redo Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, we're going to be We just have to figure out who gets to play the kid. That's okay. Now, Susan has done a tremendous job in so many ways, and as you know, as the ranking Republican on Appropriations Committee, she has huge influence on everything, but particularly the arts. So thank you for what you're doing. And Congressman Dingell, I had the privilege of serving with her husband in the House, and she does a superb job. And we're all lucky to have her over there. I want to thank Nina and Nolen. Thank you. Your comments were right on target. We have been making the case, both Susan and I, for years, that the arts are not some esoteric thing that floats in the ether. It's real money, real jobs, real productivity, particularly for places like Providence and Portland and all through the country. And we also try to make the case it's not this West Coast, East Coast thing. You know, go to the Alabama Shakespeare Theater. Some of the best instruction and action go across the country. So this is really so important. When you put those numbers down, You give powerful tools for us to ask for resources that we can show this is not a grant, this is not a giveaway, it's an investment. It's an investment in the local community economically. But it does something more than that. We are in a polarized nation at the moment. And the arts bring us together as a community. And they force us to think. And I'll go back to some of the examples this great artist gave. The Newport Jazz Festival, Newport Folk Festival. George Wein started it in the early 50s. Wonderful man. We became very good friends. But just think about it. At the time when African Americans couldn't even rent a room in Newport, Rhode Island, you had the greatest artists on that stage performing to a prominently white audience, and they suddenly realized the gift that was there. All of them, Ella Fitzgerald, it was marvelous. And we see that now, and now it's even more important to have that community, that sense of the other person. Yeah, to be able to realize, as Shakespeare said, he says most things pretty well. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. Look within. If you have a problem, if you're looking at, oh, that's none of it, wait a second. Look within. The arts does that. I got my start at 5 years old at the Rhode School of Design. I went till I was 12, and then Pee-wee football and women interfered with my artistic career. And also the fact I discovered I didn't have any real talent, but that was decided. But that exposure gave me a sense of what some people can do magnificently, like this young lady. I can't do. So we're here today to make sure that we get this data out to the decision makers, that we will work, Susan and I, with all our colleagues to make sure that we fund robustly the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the Institute for Museum and Library Sciences. And we can say now, because of what you've done, it's not just a nice thing to do. It's an investment in economic prosperity as well as community spirit, and we're deficit in both. So thank you very, very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Senator Reed. Thank you, Lynne and Carrie. I'm proud to say that the original artwork has, earlier in the spring, has been delivered to both senators from West Virginia who got their artwork, and I believe already displayed in their personal offices in the Capitol, as well as both senators from New Mexico. And we'll be adding Rhode Island and Maine today. And so with that, our next speakers are two individuals from Portland. Dinah Minot, who's the executive director of Creative Portland in Maine, as well as Ekhlas Ahmed, the co-executive director of the Cultural Alliance of Maine. Both participated in this Arts and Economic Prosperity study, and they're here to share highlights, introduce their great senator from Maine, Susan Collins, and the artwork with Carrie. Please come up.
A little bit taller, so I need to get this up here.
And a little more glamorous.
Good morning, everybody. In Arabic, we say sabah al-khair. So good morning to all of you. We are so excited to be standing up here, to be here in Washington, D.C. Thank you for including Maine. My name is, again, thank you so much. My name is Ekhlas Ahmed, and I am really excited to be here representing the Cultural Alliance of Maine, our first ever statewide organized nonprofit organization advocating for art and culture in Maine, art and culture, which makes me really happy because my background is in education. I was a classroom teacher for the past 8 years in Portland Public Schools and in Westbrook Schools, talking to our kids about the importance of storytelling. So that plays a really important role now as a director of community engagement with CAM to talk to Mainers and to talk to our young next generation about the importance of telling their story through the art. So I'm here with Dinah, who will speak more about the work we're doing in Maine. Yeah.
So again, I'm Dinah Minot, and I'm representing Portland, Maine, Creative Portland. is our city's official arts agency and nonprofit. And we did participate in the AEP 6 study, as well as the AEP 5, 4, 3. And we have Randy to thank for that. And thank you, Nolen and Nina, for all of your good work in training us today to feel confident in what we're going to say to all of you. So in Portland, Maine, I can't tell you how valuable the AEP 6 study will be, because often the nonprofits, 89% of which participated in this survey, which is quite good because many of the nonprofits don't simply have the capacity to participate. They don't have the extra staff to do it and feel overwhelmed. But I was very happy to see that almost 90% participated. And they did because all of them collectively, including us, are applying for grants, at the local level, state, and federal level. And we use these statistics to help articulate where we are and how the arts impact, the creative economy, workforce, recruitment, retention, all of that. And in Portland, we have 86 million in expenditures, which is quite large in the arts sector for Portland, Maine. And statewide, according to the BEA, we were close to 2 billion in arts and cultural production. Now that also includes for-profit architects, boat builders, etc. But that's huge. That's actually larger than the lobster industry, which everybody claims to be the main industry. No, the arts are the main industry. And that's because Maine makers have made Maine what it is today as not only a go-to destination for lobsters and lighthouses, but also to come and experience the cultural warmth, vibrancy, and all the diverse elements in our artistic landscape. And Portland has not a large population, but a condensed population of immigrants who come to Portland. And I really focus on engaging as many as possible because we've learned that, arts really don't have a barrier, language barrier. It's a matter of feeling welcomed. So our strategy is relationship building, reaching out to people, engaging people to participate in open calls, in grants, and we facilitate that, offer fiscal sponsorships, that kind of thing at Creative Portland. So I'm very thrilled to have received 3 consecutive NEA grants to do a few projects, including a creative bus shelter initiative to spotlight public transit while highlighting local artists and being able to hire them. And this is really due to, not completely, but to the AEP studies, because we have the stats to back it. And that we wouldn't have without AFTA. So I really appreciate that and thank all of you. And we also claim, and we're so excited that we have Senator Collins as the vice chair, or co-chair of the Senate Cultural Caucus, and Congresswoman Shelley Pingree as the co-chair of the Congressional Arts Caucus, two in our state. So we're lucky to have tremendous arts advocates, and particularly in a city where we were hit hard during COVID in the gig economy, and we have Senator Collins to thank really for the Save Our Stages Act. Many people, State Theater, et cetera, always talk about that. Oh, if you're going, please thank her. That saved our lives. And not only saved it, we're bouncing back bigger than ever. 3 out of 4 citizens in Greater Portland attend public art performances, performing arts performances. That's a high ratio in our nation of people that are really actively participating in the arts. So I just want to give a warm welcome and thank you for everything that you're doing and for your support. It means so much to all of us.
When I start these paintings, there's layers to it. As you can see, it's quite a tapestry. And the first place I start with the different artistic mediums, paintings, pottery, sculpture, weaving, glass blowing, music. It goes on and on and on. And then there are venues. Then there are different artist residencies. There's so many things that start coming up within these paintings. And then we find out great artists that have come from Maine or who moved to Maine and created a name synonymous with the state, and it's amazing. There was the Wyeth family, there was Winslow Homer, there's E.B. White and Charlotte's Web, and great names that we're familiar with. And sometimes I'm crazy enough to do a small recreation of the fog warning to start a painting. So much inspiration, but these things all lead to other endeavors like supporting the youth, supporting the immigrant community, supporting women, supporting the disabled, the indigenous, the black and brown. Mayo Street Arts, this is the proscenium for a wonderful community center and theater. And I found out that it was huge in theater and puppetry. I've involved with puppetry over here on a bird sculpture. But it's also home for TAN, which is the Traditional Arts Network, which also is a support system for community, the Rwandan, Somali, Congolese, and other. A huge support in that community. And so I for sure wanted to have that represented in the painting. The arches over here with the music notes and chorale books opening up is a nod to Horizon Voices, teaching young people in public speaking and the chorale, and Classical Uprising is a wonderful program that reinvents classical music. Down here at the bottom, there's a venue. It's an art gallery for women. Women are just not given the same amount of attention that men often are in the art world. And this place, they have a hopeful marquee above their building, and it's indeed hopeful. Women have made lifelong commitments to art, and their art is showcased here. Speedwell, not hopeful is the lit up marquee. Speedwell is the gallery. Thank you for the correction. Double House Arts Collective over here is a venue for disabled and able-bodied individuals, and they have voices in the community and businesses and what workshops and classes that they want to teach, and they have been given a huge amount of support in their artistic livelihood. The Maine Indian Basket Alliance, you can see a basket, Wabanaki, I believe, is the tribe. They found out that there were less than a dozen young people that still knew the craft of basket making, and I love that the traditional arts are supported in the present day. I think giving a nod to culture is so important that way, and the indigenous are front and center here within the theater. And then Indigo Art Alliance. There's a small little logo here next to some oysters, and there's a printmaker named Jordan Parks, and she was a resident of the Indigo Art Alliance, and she found her voice in the outdoors of Maine and her artistry, and she wanted to have a chance to express her artistry in connection with nature, and she was able to do that through Indigo Arts Alliance. Again, supportive groups and places for artists to have their voice and lend their voice to so many good things in society, and I thank you so much for your support. And this again is just a piece. I could paint many paintings again, and maybe I will keep painting them. But it's inspiring. I'm in one little studio in the corner of Nashville, Tennessee, and I am inspired every day by other artists all over this country doing what they do, and it's the hopeful bright spot in society right now, I believe, and we need it now more than ever. So so glad to be a part of this, and it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's going to go right on the wall.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
very much. What a talent
Oh,
you
thank
are.
you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That is beautiful. I will get it framed, and the painting will have a very special place in my office. So, thank you. I also want to thank Dinah and Ekhlas. I met with them earlier today, and it's great to meet with them again. And thank them for their efforts to enrich the arts in Maine, since the arts truly enrich our lives. And it was wonderful to be here with my dear friend and colleague, Senator Jack Reed. We worked together on a host of different issues, but we loved sharing the Senate Cultural Caucus together. And I know there are many advocates for organizations and talented individuals who cultivate the arts across our nation who are with us today, or who you're representing from afar. I want to start by telling you a couple of personal stories. I grew up in Caribou, Maine. That is about 20 far north in Maine. And when I was growing up, the local schools did not yet have kindergarten, much less pre-K. And my mother really felt that I needed stimulation. I was one of 6 kids. And she had me start taking piano lessons at age 4. So at age 4, I was taking piano lessons, and I took them for the next 14 years until I graduated from high school. But I thought about how smart she was to recognize that arts can teach so much, and particularly since we didn't have kindergarten. Now, my younger sister, who is 2 years younger, is extremely musical. She ended up going to the New England Conservatory of Music. And when she started lessons at age 4 also, she could do everything by ear. So I would be there trying to learn the notes and play, and she'd just go in and play all of the pieces that I was struggling to learn. But I thought that was so brilliant of my mother to recognize, when we didn't have kindergarten, how much I could learn through piano. She herself went back to college later, many years later, and got a degree in fine arts and painted watercolor portraits, and which are hard to do because they're less forgiving, I'm told, than oil. And my father was in the state senate at the time, and she painted a portrait of every one of the 35 state senators. And I've always treasured the one I have of my father. And I had a former state senator, this was done obviously many years ago, decades ago, come up to me recently and said, "Do you know what happened to my portrait?" Because she sold them very cheaply, but he didn't have the money for it. And unfortunately, I've not been able to find out. But 2 of those state senators who have since passed on had the watercolor portrait at their memorial service that my mother painted for them. I tell you those 2 stories to give you a sense of how important the arts have been for my own family. And it isn't just that it enriches individual lives. As Senator Reed said, it brings us together, particularly in a time when our country is so divided and polarized. The arts can bring us together. And as Dinah mentioned, it's so important when you do your visits on Capitol Hill to stress your new AEP 6 study, showing the huge, I mean huge, economic powerhouse that the arts are. I don't think most people realize that, and that's a really important message that will help us who are proponents of funding for the arts, of NEA and the National Endowment of the Humanities and other programs, to get those fundings so that Dinah can continue to get those grants. And if you make the case, as your study shows, that the arts support nearly 2.6 million jobs, from artists themselves to the employees of restaurants, shops, and other businesses that are near venues. So when we invest in the arts, we're investing in our communities. And nonprofit arts and cultural organizations and their audiences generate nearly $152 billion in economic activity. That's huge. That's huge. And if you can break it down by state, that's even better in persuading people of the importance. So, as has been mentioned, I come from a state with an extraordinary, truly extraordinary history and heritage of the arts. Artists have told me that the light in Maine is particularly conducive to painting. So come on, y'all. And in my state of Maine, we can celebrate the traditions of the Wabanaki, as has been mentioned, the genius of the Wyatts, and the creativity of our immigrant community. And in doing so, we recognized our shared humanity. So I think that we have a lot to be excited about, and it's important to see the impact on our schools as well. In Waterville, for example, which we were discussing this morning, it's a lively center for the arts, thanks to a great partnership between the city and Colby College, which has an extraordinary world-class museum. And just last week, and it's not a coincidence, Waterville High School was chosen out of 20,000 schools across the country to receive the prestigious Performing Arts School of Excellence Award from the National Federation of State High School Associations for its outstanding music, theater, and dance programs. So you don't have to be a big city to do it. Finally, let me just say, as Vice Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, I will continue to advocate for federal support for the arts, whether it's NEA or the National Endowment for the Humanities or National Public Radio, which got zeroed out on the House side, by the way. And we did that in our funding bill. We protect essential funding for key cultural institutions and programming, and it includes $207 million each for the National Endowments of the Arts and the Humanities. It also provides substantial funding for the Smithsonian Institution to continue the planning and development of the National Museum of the American Latino and the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum, which I've been working on for 20 years. And would really like to see it before I die, you know. But most of all, let us remember that in these divisive times, the arts bring us together. They're a tool of economic development, as well as a vibrant cultural life that is among any community's greatest assets. Your work greatly benefits all Americans and communities across our country. I thank you for all that you do, and I'm pleased to be your advocate here in Washington. Thank you.
I want to thank Senator Collins. What an amazing senator, leading the charge in the Senate to not only preserve funding for the arts, but continuing to grow it each year. One more round of applause for her. She's amazing. I'd like to next invite to speak to you Randy Cohen, who will explain in much greater detail what the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study is about, how it impacts your communities across the country, what are the details of how that study was created. And he is the Vice President of Research at Americans for the Arts, and he's been with our organization for 33 years. And he has overseen all 6 of these studies that come out about every 5 to 6 years. I would say it is not an understatement to say he is a national treasure to the nonprofit arts community. Randy.
Good morning, everyone. Wow, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much, Dinah. So I've got a good news story to tell today. I mean, we've heard so much just now about the power of the arts, how they inspire us. They create the communities we want to live in and work in. They beautify our towns. They beautify our cities. They bring joy to our residents. They can unite and connect our communities. We'll talk about that as well. And there's more good news for those of you who invest in the arts. The arts are an industry. The arts support jobs. The arts generate government revenue. They put personal income into our pockets, which we then use to help, pay for our lives. And they provide these benefits across the entire community. So arts are really just a great news story. Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 is an economic and social impact study of the nonprofit arts and culture industry. Why nonprofit? We heard some of the importance of the nonprofit. Well, when the senator and the members of the House invest in the arts with those congressional appropriations, those dollars are typically going to a nonprofit arts and culture organization. And it's an appropriate question to ask, what's the ROI on that? What's the public getting for that investment? Obviously, they're getting cultural benefits, and most people would understand and stipulate, personal well-being benefits. But the fact is, they're also getting economic benefits. So Arts and Economic Prosperity is the largest economic impact study of its kind. We studied 373 communities across all 50 states, plus Puerto Rico. Communities as small as 4,000 people, as large as 4 million people. Doesn't matter if you're living in a large urban city and you heard the examples, or a small rural community. If the arts are happening there, there is an economic benefit. This study's massive. We worked with so many of the people in this room, 373 regions, and we collected organizational data from nonprofit arts and culture organizations in each of those study regions to see what was the economic impact of the spending by those organizations. And then there's a value add that comes with the arts, right? When we go to an arts event, we usually make a whole, it's a whole evening, right? If we're going to a performance, for example, maybe we pay for parking, we have dinner, see the show, go out for dessert afterwards, come home, double the cost on babysitting, if you got little ones at home. So lots of economic activity related every time we go to an arts event. And so that's something else we're looking to capture. We did 224,000 audience surveys across the country, a ridiculous oversample by any measure. This study is rigorous. In addition to all of that detailed data, we build input-output analysis models for every community and every state and every region that we study. And these complex economic models require over 1 million calculations. They look at how a dollar circulates through a community and the economic impact of re-expenditures. Over 1 million calculations per study. So we use the In-Plan Economic Impact Platform. That's used by about 1,000 cities and states and numerous companies. So very rigorous approach. But the reason we take that approach, because it's complex. We got a whole bunch of economists working on that. That's because $50 spent here has a different economic impact than $50 spent in Fort Worth or $50 spent in Nashville. So these are very localized studies. All right, so what did we find? Nationally, you heard some of these numbers already. Nonprofit arts and culture industry, $151.7 billion industry. That is billion with a B. Now that figure is composed of two numbers. First, spending by the organizations themselves, $73.3 billion. That's going to be your number on the left. And that right there is a myth buster, right? Again, we all love the arts, but the fact is they're businesses. They employ people locally in the community. They purchase goods and services from other businesses. They are members of the Chamber of Commerce. They help market and promote their cities and regions to drive tourism. Arts organizations are good business citizens. Now, like any business, there's a measurable economic impact. Anytime a dollar changes hands, our economists can, run after you with their little yellow clipboard and, measure the economic impact of that spending. Unlike most industries, the arts generate all of that event-related spending. And you can see there, $78.4 billion of event-related spending by arts audiences related specifically to that event that they're attending. We'll get into a little more detail about that. But first, what's the economic impact of that? You heard the number, jobs. Arts are a jobs industry, 2.6 million jobs supported as a result of that economic activity. And here's one of the interesting things. Arts jobs are necessarily local jobs. These are not the kind of jobs that are going to be offshored. They're right there in the community of the community. Something else about jobs, we think, again, of arts and culture organizations as these wonderful amenities, and they are, but they employ more than just musicians and curators and actors. They also employ accountants and auditors, marketing people, security. Many of our wonderful old theaters, in our communities. You've got electricians and building engineers and plumbers. And so arts organizations support a whole range of jobs just by themselves. And then there's also the event-related spending by arts audiences, which really activates and energizes our hospitality industry. So these are jobs across the community, not just in arts organizations and not just artists. A vibrant arts community is good for all kinds of employment sectors. Bottom line, arts, not just food for the soul, but putting food on the table for 2.6 million households right here in the United States. We also look at household income, right? If you got a job, you're making income. People are making livings from the arts. They make, and again, all kinds of jobs, and that's what they use to pay rent, to buy food, to pay tuition. So arts are also providing that personal income for folks. And here's one particularly relevant for where we are today, here in the Capitol. Generates government revenue, $29.1 billion in local, state, and federal government revenue. And you can see how that breaks down, $4.4 billion to local government, $5.5 billion to state government, and look at federal government, $19.2 billion. These figures are well beyond the investment that the public sector is making in the arts. Small investment, big returns, right? That's what we're seeing here. Arts are kindling for the economy. When we invest in the arts, we're receiving all of these economic benefits across the community. All right, millions, billions, let's break it down a little bit. This is where it gets kind of fun. 224,677 audience intercept surveys across the country in all kinds of communities and a whole range of events. The typical attendee, $38.46 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. that is money going to local businesses every time somebody goes to an arts event. And you can see about half of that's on food, and there's usually maybe some shopping or retail. Some might be looking at lodging. Wow, can you still get a room for $5.02? And would you want to if you could get it? Remember, these are averages. Not everybody has a lodging cost. Not everybody pays for childcare. Ask 224,000 people a question. You're going to get some interesting other examples. One of my favorites is there was a farmer in Wisconsin who paid somebody $60 to milk his cows so he could go to the theater that night. Isn't that great? People are doing what it takes to get to the arts. Now, in addition to how much did you spend, we did these interviews, we asked about their expenditures, we also asked them about their zip code. Because we want to find out, does that attendee live in the county in which the arts event took place, which would make them local? Are they from outside the county? 30%, about a third of attendees came from outside the county. So next time you go to an arts event, you've got someone on your left, someone on your right. One of you is probably from outside the county, right? And do you spend differently? You bet. Look at that, $60.57, the one on the right, per person per event, not including the cost of admission. Now, we asked those folks yet another question, because we're just that annoying, and that is, why are you here? We're glad you're here. Thank you for coming, but are you here on business? Are you here visiting friends or family? 77% said, we came specifically for this arts event. 4 in 5 people said, this is why we're in town. And then look at that difference in spending. Now, we asked their local counterparts a question, which was, well, what if this arts event wasn't taking place? Would you have stayed home, done something else? We gave them a bunch of options. 51%, more than half, said, oh, I traveled to a different community to attend a similar kind of arts event. So what this says is when we support the arts, when we fund the arts, we're investing in an industry that's drawing people to the community, and they're spending money at local businesses. Not only that, we're keeping our neighbors and their hard-won discretionary dollars right here in town. You could spend the money here, you could spend it somewhere else. Someone's going to get the benefit of that. Some local business is going to get the benefit of that economic activity. So that's what we get with this vibrant cultural community. So economic and also social impact. AP6 is different than its predecessors. It's the biggest, it's the most inclusive. We translated the audience surveys into 24 languages to reach as many communities as possible. Everyone we asked, and we asked these questions in total of 25 languages, to get it, what do the arts mean to them personally, and the social impact of the arts as they see it. 89% said the arts are a source of pride for my community. 81%, this cultural institution is a pillar. 86% said, it's important to me that this arts event and this cultural opportunity be around for future generations. And the same percent, I'd feel a sense of loss if this no longer was available. One of the things we also had our local partners do was be very deliberate and intentional in doing these audience surveys in BIPOC organizations and communities of color. And you'll see their findings, that was 37,000, right? So this is still a huge sample. Look how identical the two columns of findings are. Only fractional differences of the whole universe versus the respondents at BIPOC events. And here's another comparison. Look how similar the audience spending is, $38.46 versus $38.29. We see very similar comparisons to local versus non-local attendees. What this says is arts and culture, these economic and social impact benefits are being provided by arts and culture organizations across the community. And this, I think, needs to supercharge a conversation about how the arts are being funded in our communities. Americans for the Arts, a few years back, before the pandemic, we did a survey of about 550 grant-making local arts agencies. And we found that the largest organizations by budget, largest 16% of the organizations by budget, were pulling 73% of the money And typically you're going to find those are European cultural traditions being funded. And so a lot of our organizations are not competing equally. And hopefully this data is going to start some new or strengthen existing conversations about that. So in more findings about all this in the report, I'm going to give you the website. We talked about some of the, public understanding this. The public gets this. 86% of the American public says, yeah, the arts improve quality of life and livability in my communities. That's not a huge surprise. I'm always taken by 79% understand the economic and jobs benefits of arts and culture to the community. So the public gets this. So this is a conversation, this is discourse people are ready to have. We heard the senator and several people talking so passionately about the arts bringing us together. 72% of the American public says the arts provide shared experiences regardless of age, race, ethnicity. The arts and culture create opportunities for shared experiences in public spaces. Nobody cares where you voted for or where you practice your faith. We're at this great festival. We're all singing Hamilton for the third time together, right? So that's something that the arts bring to us. And then 63%, arts and culture help them understand other cultures in their community. So as we try to connect more and do what the senator was talking about, arts are a solution here. We've got a number of national partners that are part of this study, and you see national organizations for mayors, for city managers, for the funding community, for the business community, community organizations, Race Forward, national independent venues, all national partners on this economic study because A, they also believe arts have a fundamental role in building healthy, vibrant communities, and two, they buy into the methodology and they buy into the results. You can feel good about using these data. So, bottom line, arts, they bring us joy, they bring us inspiration, they beautify our cities and towns, but the fact is, they're businesses, they're an industry, $151.7 billion industry that supports 2.6 million jobs in this country. The arts aren't just nice, they're necessary. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe a question or two, if anyone has any.
I know there was a question from one of our Facebook Live participants asking, where is this data available?
Perfect. I was just going to say, because I did mention, I'm going to step away from the mic. Go right here.
And can you say that loud?
Yeah. So you can find, we've got a website that has the reports, the findings, what they mean, they're contextualized, and AEP6.AmericansForTheArts.org. Real easy to find. All kinds of great tools to help you interpret, how to use, how to activate the information. There's so much more in this report to work with. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. As I said, national treasure.
Yeah.
We have another speaker from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Her name is Deb Polich. She is the president and CEO of Artrain. She's been there 30 years as well, another long timer. She's also the executive director of Creative Washtenaw, which is a county in Michigan, which participated in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. And I would love for you to come up, and also soon I think your Congresswoman will be here. She's always here. Oh, great, I just saw you behind someone. Congresswoman Dingell, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Nina, and thank you, Americans for the Arts, for pulling this all together and providing us with so much data and so much information and support. So I was introduced to Debbie Dingell about 30 years ago by our mutual friend, Marina Whitman, who was then the chief economist for General Motors. And Mrs. Dingell at that point was the government and community relations director for General Motors. And Marina thought Mrs. Dingell might have some interest because of her appreciation for art design, especially automotive design, that she might be interested in providing support for Artrain, the visual art museum on a train that I manage, and it toured around the United States developing local arts agencies. Mrs. Dingell knew about Artrain because her husband, Representative John Dingell, was one of the key champions for the legislation that established the National Endowment for the Arts and the Humanities. Artrain, a Michigan program, was one of the NEA's first national initiatives. Fast forward. By the shape-shifting that is congressional districting, I became a constituent of Mr. Dingell's, and then as she won the district upon his retirement, Mrs. Dingell's. Ever since, Representative Debbie Dingell has been a stalwart supporter of the arts and creative industries. She does that by introducing and voting for legislation and policy in support of the sector. She also does that by showing up in the district at cultural events, both big and small. And she answers the phone and assists us when we have problems. Mrs. Dingell gets it. She knows that nationally, this is a $1.3 trillion industry, and that in Michigan, it's a $15.3 billion industry, and in our district, the greater Ann Arbor area, that the nonprofit sector is supported by the $800 million. Representative Dingell is soon to introduce the CREATE Act, I should say reintroduce the CREATE Act, the comprehensive resources for entrepreneurs in the arts to transform the economy Act. The CREATE Act aims to expand small business programs and resources afforded to other sectors so that artists, creative workers, and businesses, both for-profit and nonprofit, may have those resources afforded to them as well. Small businesses drive the U.S. economy, and small arts and creative businesses are in the thick of that mix. Post-COVID, we need the support more than ever, and going forward, it will very much enhance our sector. Representative Dingell understands this, and her dedication to helping the arts and creative sector make her one of our great champions in Congress. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend and my representative, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell.
So good to see you always. Good morning, everybody. I want to thank Deb for that kind introduction, and we really have been friends. Neither of us is old. We are seasoned. And I've always been an advocate for the arts, and I went on to become president of the GM Foundation and worked with Deb, and I've had a lot of roles in life. And I've worked with Deb and her husband, Russ, who is an incredible man himself, in many different ways to support the arts, both in our local level, where we both live in Washtenaw County, but in the state of Michigan, but nationally. And what you all are doing and you're being here, it's just good to see people again. I gotta tell you, it's nice to be able to be in person again. And I would argue to you that the arts are what kept many people sane during this pandemic and these times of isolation, that it was the arts that brought comfort and empathy and glue to so many people. Because I think artists of all backgrounds have a unique power to envision unknown worlds and bring them to life for all to experience. Art and artistic expression are vital to our nation's cultural heritage and should be protected and encouraged. The arts play a key role in preserving our American culture and capturing the spirit of our times. They are both a civilizing force for tremendous good and a driving force which too many people do not understand for economic innovation and for competitiveness. The arts are critical to invest in, and they're worth fighting for now more than ever. So for me in Michigan, from the beats of Motown to the Henry Ford Museum, from the Michigan Opera Theater to Artrain to local galleries, museums, artisans, and entrepreneurs that enrich all of our towns and cities. Michigan's diverse and vibrant arts community is a part of the fabric of our state and our local communities. Deb knows this. On any given weekend, I go to 13, 14 events on a Saturday, and then another on Sunday. And there are those local events. It's where local artists in so many different ways are displaying their wares. They do the farmers markets and the artisan markets. They're playing their music, and in the cities, in the downtowns, there's dance, and there's at night. The arts draw us together as a community. I mean, it's really very clear. And the arts and culture sector, as Deb said, brings in about $15.5 billion for Michigan's economy every year, including providing over 100,000 jobs to Michiganders. And that doesn't take into account the art of designing a car. Michigan still, I'm a car girl. And I know we don't appreciate the design. I mean, for me, it's vehicles and trucks, but the design of so many different things is part of art as well. And I've long been a supporter of creative economy organizations in Michigan. And as Deb said, last year, arts and culture organizations brought in more than $100 million to Washington County alone. Again, creating 1,500 jobs and opening the doors of opportunity for communities in Washtenaw, which is part of my district, but it brought the arts brought into a broader part of my district and across the state. So, as Deb said, I'm very proud. Last Congress with Senator Brian Schatz and John Cornyn, and trust me, that's not the normal group of people you always see introducing legislation together. I was proud to introduce the CREATE Act in the House. This legislation would boost the creative economy and support the development of jobs in arts businesses by expanding loans through the Small Business Administration to include art entrepreneurs, small businesses that support the creative economy and develop economic tools to help them thrive. I'm planning on reintroducing it soon to ensure that we can continue to invest in and grow this vital industry and support artists, and we need all of you to help get us that grassroots support across the country and get it through this year. And it is bipartisan. If Senator John Cornyn can co-sponsor this bill, trust me. I mean, I love John Cornyn, by the way. I'm one of those people that believes in bipartisanship, but he's not the most liberal. I mean, he understands the importance of it, and that's what's so important, is that this shouldn't be a partisan issue. It enhances our communities. It's what gives us quality of life. It's those rituals and traditions of arts and culture that connect us generation to generation, and we need to talk about that. Artists live and work in every state and every congressional district across the country, and their immense contribution to the spirit of our communities and to our local economies is something we should all be fighting for. Arts and culture, I just talked about this again, bind our communities together. They inspire people of all ages. They bring joys to families, empower our local economies. The arts are a powerful force that bring us together, remind us that we have far more in common than many people think we do, and that there's much more that unites us than divides us. And by the way, I think, when times get really tough, in our state of Michigan right now, they're really tough. We have the largest population one of the largest Jewish populations and one of the largest Arab American populations. And arts may be one of the very few ways right now, with all the anger and the division. Music, letting it soothe you, finding the commonness is about one of the only things right now that can bring decades of work that's falling apart together. Fight for the arts. They matter. I want to thank you for being here, and I hope I can get the Create Act through, and thank you for letting me talk to you today.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dingell. You stated it so beautifully, and thank you for addressing the turmoil in the world going on right now, and really centered in Michigan, where you have, as you said, the highest population of of Jewish people and of Arabs. And my heart goes out to all, being a Muslim American myself. I want to close things out. We have a wonderful artist committee that works with Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund. And Josh Robin, the great singer, actor, musician, wanted to be with us, so he sent a video. The reason why he can't be with us is that he is on Broadway now, performing, and he wanted to send a message from an artist perspective of why the arts matter and how this kind of an economic impact study can make a difference. He is one of our best advocates. He's testified on Capitol Hill for us. He's helped advance funding for the National Endowment for the Arts. And as you can see, and as members of Congress have stated, there are many pieces of legislation that we're all lobbying for today that involves arts and health, arts and defense, arts with veterans, arts and education, and arts with the creative economy. And I think Josh's words will be very powerful. So I'd like to show a video. And we will close out with that. Thank you in advance. And we'll need the sound all the way up. Excuse me. Just one moment. Well, there's always a little technical difficulty. Let's get the volume first. We'll restart it from the beginning, so don't worry.
The ushers, box office staff.
And so we'll restart it from the beginning, and you won't miss a thing.
And that's just the people. Hi, I'm Josh Groban, an American for the Arts Artist Committee member. I'm currently performing on Broadway as Sweeney Todd. I'm coming to you today from my dressing room at the Lunt Fontanne Theater in New York City, having just finished our matinee performance. It literally takes a village to enable those of us on stage to do what we do 7 times a week. So, I wanted to give you a real-time glimpse at how Broadway and the arts help drive our nation's economy. Now, Sweeney Todd alone employs hundreds of people daily, from those who do makeup, wardrobe, to the backstage bricks and technicians, not to mention the ushers, box office staff, security, and those who run the concession stand. And that's just the people on site. This magnificent theater was built in 1910, so you can be sure there are countless carpenters, plumbers, and electricians keeping this gem in operation. There are also hundreds more who work outside the theater in marketing, publicity, production, and so many other essential roles. These are all jobs that support households and the economy. You multiply that equation by the number of shows on Broadway, and it starts to make your head spin. The U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that the nation's arts and culture sector, including nonprofit, commercial, and education, is an over $1 trillion industry that supports 4.9 million jobs. That's 4.4% of the nation's economy. A larger share of GDP than powerhouse sectors such as construction, transportation, and agriculture. We are a mighty ecosystem despite all of the challenges. A sobering fact is that the arts were among the hardest hit industries during the pandemic. Arts organizations were the first to close and the last to reopen, and jobs in the performing arts still have a long way to go to get back to pre-pandemic levels. Job losses at nonprofit arts organizations were 5 times worse than any other nonprofit. Remember, these are jobs across our community, not just performers. But the arts are not just a jobs industry, they're a tourism driver. Arts and economic prosperity 6 puts a number next to each of these points. Take attendees at arts events, for example. Typical attendee spends almost $39 per person above ticket price on meals, parking, and transportation every time they go to an arts event. Here's where it gets interesting. 1/3 of audiences come in from out of town, and they average over $60 to spend per person. When Americans for the Arts asked them why they were visiting, 77% said it was to attend that arts event. That means local retailers, including hotels, reap the benefits of a vibrant arts scene. So, if someone you know or an elected official tries to tell you that the arts are merely a luxury, worth supporting in prosperous times, but hard to justify in tough economic times, remind them that the arts and culture are intrinsic not only to our national identity, but that they build and support our economy in so many powerful ways. Thank you so much, and I'll see you at the field.
Thank you, everybody. Please enjoy the remaining refreshments and pick up any other materials at the front desk. Thank you.